The story of Julius Caesar begins in a Rome that looked powerful from the outside, but was cracking from within. The Roman Republic had conquered lands across the Mediterranean. Its armies were feared. Its wealth was enormous. Its name carried authority from Spain to Greece, from North Africa to the edges of Asia. But inside the city itself, Rome was restless. The Senate still spoke of tradition. The people still gathered in public squares. The laws still claimed that no one man should hold too much power. But beneath all of that, something had changed. Ambition had become sharper. Politics had become more violent. Generals were no longer just servants of the Republic. They were becoming powers of their own, followed by armies who were loyal not to Rome, but to the men who paid them, rewarded them, and led them to victory. Into this world, in 100 BC, Julius Caesar was born. His family had an ancient name. The Julii claimed descent from Venus, the goddess of love and beauty. It was a powerful story, but in real politics, stories were not enough. By the time Caesar was born, his family had prestige, but not great power. He grew up knowing that Rome respected old blood, but obeyed strength. And from an early age, Caesar seemed determined to become more than just another nobleman with a famous name. He wanted influence. He wanted glory. He wanted to be remembered. But before Caesar could rise, he had to survive. As a young man, Rome fell under the control of the dictator Sulla, a ruthless leader who used fear to destroy his enemies. Names were written on public lists. Men were hunted down. Families lost everything. In those years, politics was not just a debate. It was life or death. Caesar was connected by marriage to Sulla's enemies, and Sulla ordered him to divorce his wife, Cornelia. Caesar refused. It was a dangerous act of defiance. He was stripped of his inheritance. He was forced into hiding. For a time, the future ruler of Rome was a fugitive, moving carefully, relying on friends, family, and luck to stay alive. Eventually, Sulla spared him. But he reportedly warned the people around him that this young man contained the spirit of many dangerous men. In other words, Sulla saw something in Caesar. Not power yet, but the possibility of it. After escaping danger in Rome, Caesar began building himself into the man he wanted to become. He served in the military, gaining experience far from the political chaos of the capital. He learned how soldiers lived, how they suffered, and what made them loyal. And Caesar understood something that would shape his entire career. Men do not follow titles. They follow confidence. They follow reward. They follow leaders who seem impossible to break. One of the most famous stories from Caesar's early life happened at sea. While traveling, he was captured by pirates. Most men would have been terrified. Caesar was not. He acted almost insulted. When the pirates demanded a ransom, Caesar told them they had asked for too little. He said he was worth more. He laughed with them, spoke boldly, and treated captivity as if it were a temporary inconvenience. But he also made a promise. Once he was free, he would come back and punish them. The pirates laughed. They thought it was arrogance. But when the ransom was paid, Caesar raised ships, hunted them down, captured them, and had them executed. It was a brutal lesson. Caesar did not bluff. When he returned to Rome, he entered politics with a powerful understanding of image. He knew the Roman people loved confidence. They loved generosity. They loved men who seemed larger than life. So Caesar gave them that. He delivered speeches that stirred crowds. He spent heavily on public games and celebrations. He built relationships, won supporters, and positioned himself as a champion of the common people against the old aristocratic elite. But all of this came at a cost. Caesar borrowed enormous amounts of money. To some, he looked reckless. But Caesar was gambling on himself. He believed that if he could rise high enough, fast enough, the rewards would outweigh the risk. And to rise higher, he needed allies. That is when he formed one of the most important political partnerships in Roman history, the First Triumvirate. It was an alliance between Caesar, Pompey the Great, and Marcus Licinius Crassus. Pompey was Rome's most famous general, a man surrounded by military glory. Crassus was one of the richest men in Rome. And Caesar had political skill, ambition, and growing popularity with the people. Together, they could overpower the Senate. For a time, the alliance worked. With their support, Caesar became consul, one of the highest offices in Rome. But what he truly needed was not just office. He needed command. He needed soldiers. He needed a stage large enough to make himself unforgettable. That stage would be Gaul. In 58 BC, Caesar took command in a region north of Italy, where Roman power met the tribal world of Gaul. To many Romans, it was dangerous, distant, and uncertain. To Caesar, it was opportunity. For nearly a decade, Caesar fought the Gallic Wars. This was not one clean campaign. It was years of marching, negotiating, attacking, retreating, building, and surviving. Caesar faced tribes that knew the land better than he did. He faced warriors who fought fiercely for their homes. He faced weather, distance, hunger, and rebellion. But Caesar had a gift for turning pressure into momentum. He moved faster than enemies expected. He built bridges with shocking speed. He used engineering as a weapon. He wrote about his victories in a way that made him look not only successful, but necessary. Back in Rome, people read his accounts and saw him as a defender of civilization, a commander bringing order to chaos. But in Gaul, the reality was far bloodier. Cities were destroyed, populations were enslaved, resistance was crushed. Caesar was building glory, but he was building it through war. The greatest challenge came from Vercingetorix, a Gallic leader who managed to unite many tribes against Rome. For the first time, Caesar faced not scattered enemies, but a movement. The conflict reached its peak at Alesia. Caesar trapped Vercingetorix inside the city, but then a massive Gallic relief force arrived, surrounding Caesar from the outside. Now Caesar was the besieger, and the besieged. Most generals would have panicked. Caesar built two walls. One wall faced inward, trapping Vercingetorix. The other faced outward, defending against the army coming to rescue him. When the battle came, Caesar was attacked from both sides. The pressure was enormous. His men were exhausted. The outcome could have destroyed him. But Caesar held the line. And won. Vercingetorix surrendered. Gaul was broken, and Caesar became a legend. But legends make enemies. Back in Rome, the political world had changed. Crassus was dead. Pompey, once Caesar's ally, had moved closer to the Senate. And the Senate looked at Caesar with fear. He had conquered Gaul. He had an army loyal to him. He had popularity with the people. And he had ambition that seemed to have no limits. So the Senate made its move. They ordered Caesar to give up his command and return to Rome as a private citizen. To obey would mean humiliation, prosecution, and possibly death. To refuse would mean civil war. Caesar stood at the edge of a decision that would change history. In 49 BC, he led his army to the Rubicon River, the boundary between his province and Italy. Roman law forbade a general from bringing his army across that line. Crossing it meant rebellion. It meant there was no going back. Caesar crossed. The Republic had entered civil war. Pompey and many senators fled Rome, shocked by Caesar's speed. Caesar moved through Italy with confidence, taking control before his enemies could fully respond. But Pompey was still dangerous. He had military experience, support, and forces across the eastern Mediterranean. The struggle between the two men became a fight for Rome itself. At Pharsalus, Caesar faced Pompey in a decisive battle. Pompey had the larger army. He had every reason to believe he could win. But Caesar's soldiers were veterans. They had followed him through Gaul. They trusted him completely. When the battle began, Caesar used discipline and timing to break Pompey's advantage. Pompey's army collapsed. Pompey fled to Egypt, and there, instead of finding safety, he was murdered. When Caesar arrived in Egypt and was presented with Pompey's severed head, he did not celebrate. Pompey had been his enemy, but also once his ally, his son-in-law, and one of Rome's greatest men. Caesar wept. Then he turned his attention to Egypt. There, he became involved with Cleopatra, a young queen fighting for her throne. Their alliance was political, personal, and deeply consequential. With Caesar's support, Cleopatra secured her rule. And Caesar, already master of Rome, became entangled in the destiny of Egypt. When he returned to Rome, Caesar was no longer one powerful man among many. He was the center of Roman power. He became dictator, first temporarily, then for longer terms, and finally dictator for life. To his supporters, Caesar brought order after years of chaos. He reformed the calendar, giving Rome the Julian calendar. He addressed debt. He expanded citizenship. He planned great building projects. He filled the Senate with new men and tried to reshape the Roman state into something that could govern a vast empire. But to his enemies, every reform looked like another step toward monarchy. Rome hated kings. The Republic had been built on the memory of expelling kings centuries earlier. To many senators, Caesar's power felt like a betrayal of everything Rome claimed to be. And Caesar did little to ease their fear. He accepted honors no Roman had held before. His image appeared on coins. His seat seemed higher than others. His presence dominated public life. Whether he wanted a crown or not, many believed he was acting like a king. And so, a conspiracy formed. The men who joined it did not all hate Caesar personally. Some owed him favors. Some had been pardoned by him. Some had fought against him and been forgiven. But they believed Rome could not survive while one man stood above the law. Among them were Cassius and Brutus. Brutus was especially painful because Caesar trusted him. To later generations, his name would become the symbol of betrayal. The conspirators chose the Ides of March, 44 BC. That morning, there were warnings, bad omens, rumors. A soothsayer had warned Caesar to beware the Ides of March. His wife, Calpurnia, reportedly begged him not to go, disturbed by dreams of blood and disaster. For a moment, Caesar considered staying home. But then he was persuaded to attend the Senate. A ruler could not appear afraid. So Caesar went. He entered the meeting place unaware that the men gathering around him had already decided his fate. At first, they approached him as if presenting a petition. Then one grabbed his robe. Another struck, then another. Blades flashed, voices rose. The man who had survived Sulla, pirates, Gaul, civil war, and Pompey now found himself surrounded not by foreign enemies, but Roman senators. Caesar fought at first, but there were too many. He was stabbed again and again. 23 wounds. And when he saw Brutus among them, whether or not he spoke the famous words, the meaning of the moment was clear. It was betrayal. Caesar fell at the foot of Pompey's statue. The conspirators believed they had saved the Republic. They were wrong. The assassination did not restore freedom. It unleashed chaos. The Roman people did not rise in joy. Many were shocked. Many were angry. Caesar had been loved by the common people and by his soldiers. His death created not peace, but a power vacuum. Soon, Rome was pulled into another cycle of civil war. Out of that chaos rose Caesar's adopted heir, Octavian, who would later become Augustus, the first Roman emperor. The Republic was not saved. It was buried, and Caesar, the man who had been killed to prevent kingship, became the figure who made empire inevitable. His story remains difficult because he was never just one thing. He was brilliant and ruthless, generous and calculating, a reformer and a destroyer, a man who saw the weakness of the Republic and used that weakness to rise above it. Was he trying to save Rome from a broken system, or was he the final force that broke it? That question has followed him for more than 2,000 years. But one thing is certain. Julius Caesar changed the course of history. He turned military conquest into political power. He exposed the limits of the Roman Republic. And through his life and death, he opened the door to the Roman Empire. He never wore the title emperor, but every emperor who came after him walked through the path he created. His name became more than a name. Caesar became a title, a symbol of command, a word that echoed through centuries, from Rome to Byzantium to the courts of Europe and beyond. He began as a young nobleman with a fading family name. He became the most powerful man in Rome, and even when his enemies struck him down, they could not stop what he had set in motion. Because sometimes, history does not turn on a battle alone. Sometimes it turns on a single man, standing at a river, choosing to cross. Julius Caesar,